My name is Sherlock Holmes, and the world is not what it seems. It is a palimpsest, a layer cake of reality, and most people are content to live their lives on the driest, most superficial crust. I am not most people. I live in a minimalistic flat overlooking a London that never sleeps, a city of 10 million souls leaving digital ghosts in their wake. My one indulgence is a wall, covered not in wallpaper, but in a sprawling mosaic of notes, equations, and string, a physical manifestation of the connections most cannot see. I drink black coffee long after midnight, and the sounds of Arvo Part or Brian Eno are the solvents I use to clean the noise from my mind. The case began, as the truly strange ones often do, not with a bang, but with a whisper of wrongness. A whisper that arrived at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, in the form of a direct message to a private social media account I maintain for such inquiries. The notification glowed on my phone, a single blue eye in the dark. I was in my chair, a cup of bitter black liquid steaming beside me, dissecting the data patterns of a corporate embezzlement case. It was mundane, a puzzle for a child. This message was not. The username was at echo in the static. The message was a single, stark sentence. He's going to kill me in 3 days. He's already done it. I remember. A prank. A cry for help. 100 logical explanations presented themselves. But logic, I have learned, is merely the first gatekeeper. Beyond it lies a wilderness of possibility. It was the tense that snagged in my mind, a fishhook in the fabric of reason. He's going to kill me. He's already done it. I typed a reply, my fingers precise on the cool glass. Location. Details. The response was immediate, as if she had been waiting, her finger poised over the screen. A address in Primrose Hill. And then, I know you investigate the impossible. My name is Elara Vance. I am a computational linguist. And I am living my life out of order. That was the hook. Not the threat of murder, but the claim of a broken timeline. A soul out of sequence. I finished my coffee, the bitterness a grounding anchor. Show me, I whispered to the silent room, to the city beyond the glass, to the unseen forces that had chosen to knock on my door. Elara Vance's apartment was a mirror of my own in its minimalism, but where mine was a curated silence, hers was the silence of a vacuum, of a space recently and violently evacuated. She was a woman in her early 30s, with eyes that held a storm of conflicting information. They were the sharp, intelligent eyes of a scientist, but swimming in a deep, existential terror. She wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, her posture rigid, as if holding herself together by sheer force of will. "Mr. Holmes," she said, her voice steady, belying the panic in her gaze. "Thank you for coming. I know how this sounds. Assume I have no preconceptions of how things should sound," I replied, my own voice calm, a counterweight to her charged atmosphere. I took in the room. A large monitor showed cascading lines of code. Books on semantic analysis and quantum mechanics were stacked neatly on a shelf. A single, framed photograph showed her laughing with a man, his arm around her. A colleague? A lover? "Tell me about the memory," I instructed, not sitting. I needed to move, to feel the space. She took a sharp breath. "It's not a memory like remembering a birthday. It's somatic. A full sensorium recall. The smell of his cologne, something with sandalwood and ozone. The feel of the rain on my face. The weight of his hands on my throat. The sound of the traffic from the bypass, distorted, like through water. And the date on my phone, lying on the wet pavement. It was this Friday. 11:23 p.m. He. Dr. Alistair Finch. My partner. We worked together at the Institute for Cognitive Studies. I glanced at the photograph. The same man. A premonition. Stress-induced psychosis. No, the word was final. I am a rationalist, Mr. Holmes. I model language for AI. I deal in probabilities and logic trees. This was not a dream. It was an experience. I have the data. She walked to her computer, her movements brittle. For the past 6 months, I've been part of a closed study Finch is running. Advanced meditation. Binaural beats. A regimen designed to expand the focus of one's consciousness. To peek behind the curtain. She pulled up a graph on her screen. It showed a series of neural readings, EEG patterns. This is my baseline. A relatively calm, oscillating wave. And this is from the session 2 nights ago, when the memory occurred. The wave was a chaotic spike, a seismic event in the landscape of her mind. It was unlike any seizure or normal brain activity I had ever seen in medical literature. It was a spike of pure, unadulterated information. You believe the regimen triggered this? I asked, my interest now fully, dangerously engaged. I don't know what it triggered, she whispered, her composure cracking. But since then, things have been wrong. I'll think of a song, and it will play on the next radio station. I'll have a thought about a forgotten friend, and they will call. Small things. Synchronicities. But this memory of my own death, it's not small. It's a black hole, and it's pulling me in. I looked at her, this woman standing at the precipice of the rational world, telling me she had already fallen. And I knew, with a cold certainty that settled in my bones, that she was not lying. She was a key, and the lock she was meant for was one I had been searching for my entire life. I will need access to everything, I said, my voice low. Your research. Your communications with Finch. Your financials, your medical history. And I will need to speak with Dr. Finch. A flicker of pure terror in her eyes. You can't tell him I told you. In the memory, he knew I knew. He seemed pleased. I left her apartment as the first light of dawn smudged the London skyline grey. The city was waking up, blissfully unaware that the rules of its existence were being quietly subverted. In my pocket was a data drive containing the sum of Elara Vance's digital life. In my mind, a single, burning question. To the audience, to the silent witness of this story, I thought, my breath misting in the cold air. We believe time is a river, carrying us inexorably forward. But what if it's an ocean? What if the current is just an illusion, and we are simply treading water, occasionally catching a glimpse of a wave that has already passed, or one that is yet to come? What if memory is not a record, but a destination? My first stop was not to see Dr. Finch. It was to cross-reference Elara's memory with the cold, hard data of the city. I sat in a cafe, my leather notebook open, my laptop humming. I accessed traffic camera archives for the Primrose Hill bypass for the corresponding Friday night. I ran a search for police reports, ambulance calls, any blip in the city's digital pulse that could confirm her story. There was nothing. No record of an incident. It was as she had said, it hadn't happened yet. Or it had, in a fold of reality she alone could perceive. I opened a chat window on my screen. It was a custom interface, connected to a powerful, non-public AI language model I'd trained on cold cases, philosophical texts, and anomalous data. I called it Wiggins, a nod to the invisible army of street urchins the original Holmes once commanded. Wiggins, I typed. Correlate, Dr. Alistair Finch, Institute for Cognitive Studies. Focus, research publications, patent applications, financial backers, personal life. Deep scan. Look for shadows. The response was almost instantaneous, text flowing like a quiet stream. Asterisk, processing. Dr. Alistair Finch, age 45. Leading figure in non-local consciousness theory. Recent private funding from Chimera Holdings, a shell corporation with ties to speculative tech ventures. Personal life, minimal digital footprint. No social media. 2 former research assistants left their positions under unclear circumstances. Medical files sealed under a private research clause. Anomaly: Finch holds several patents for resonance frequency entrainment devices. Asterisk. Resonance. Entrainment. The words echoed Elara's description of her regimen. This was no simple meditation. This was targeted, technological manipulation of consciousness. My phone vibrated. A notification from the security system in my flat. Motion detected. The camera feed showed a figure, a man, standing outside my door. He wasn't trying the lock. He was just standing there, waiting. He was tall, wore a dark, expensive-looking coat, and his face was calm, unnervingly still. It was Dr. Alistair Finch. He had found me. Not in 3 days. Now. And so it begins, I thought, a slow smile touching my lips. The current was quickening. The ocean was revealing its first, real wave. I did not rush. Panic is a chemical response, a relic of a simpler biology that has no place in the architecture of deduction. I finished my coffee, the bitter dregs a final taste of the mundane, and watched the man on my screen. Dr. Alistair Finch. He stood with a preternatural patience, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. He wasn't looking at the door, but slightly off to the side, as if observing the very molecules of the air. He knew the camera was there. He was presenting an image. To you, the observer, I thought, my mind a cool, clear stream amidst the sudden turbulence, asterisk this is the moment where the chessboard is revealed. Every move from here is a calculation. He has made the first play, coming to my home, the seat of my power. It is an act of either supreme confidence or profound desperation. My task is to determine which asterisk. I typed a final command to Wiggins, asterisk, deep dive on Chimera Holdings. Follow the money. And cross-reference all of Finch's published work with the concepts of Neville Goddard, the law of assumption, and the nature of time as a subjective construct. Asterisk if Elara was experiencing time out of sequence, I needed to understand the philosophy, the intent, behind the technology that might have caused it. I rose, my coat settling on my shoulders like a second skin. I did not arm myself. My weapon has always been my mind. The only thing I picked up was my leather notebook. The ride up in the elevator was a study in silence. The soft hum of the mechanism was the only sound, a prelude to the confrontation. When the doors slid open onto my floor, he was still there, unchanged. Dr. Finch, I said, my voice neutral, a blank slate. To what do I owe the unexpected pleasure? He turned his head slowly. His eyes were the most striking feature, a pale, almost silver gray, and they held a depth of focus that was unsettling. They didn't just see me, they seemed to be analyzing the light reflecting off me, the subtle micro-expressions on my face, the very history of my existence written in the set of my shoulders. Mr. Holmes, he replied. His voice was a low baritone, smooth and cultured, yet it carried a resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate in the marrow of my bones. I apologize for the intrusion. I find formal appointments to be limiting. They create expectations. I prefer to meet the reality of a person, not their prepared presentation. A philosophy that conveniently bypasses consent, I remarked, unlocking my door and stepping inside. I did not invite him in, but he followed, a shadow entering the light. His gaze swept across my flat, missing nothing. It lingered on the chaotic, note-covered wall, a flicker of what might have been appreciation in his metallic eyes. Consent is a fascinating concept, is it not? We believe we give it freely, yet our choices are so often dictated by subconscious programming, by the unseen currents of our past. To truly consent, one must first become aware of the current. He was speaking her language. The language of consciousness, of unseen forces. I assume this philosophical discourse pertains to your work, I said, moving to the kitchen to pour 2 glasses of water. A gesture of false civility to maintain the rhythm of the encounter. And to Elara Vance. He accepted the glass but did not drink. Elara is a brilliant woman. One of the most gifted subjects we have ever worked with. Her sensitivity to the resonant fields is extraordinary. He looked at me directly. She came to you. It wasn't a question. People with extraordinary problems often do. Her problem is not what you think, he said, his tone shifting from philosophical to clinical. She believes she is experiencing premonitions. Visions of a future event. This is a known, though rare, side effect of the work we are doing. The process of deconstructing the ego's grip on the space-time narrative can cause temporal bleed-through. Echoes from adjacent probabilities. Adjacent probabilities? I echoed, leaning against my desk, mirroring his calm. You're talking about the multiverse. You're telling me she's not predicting the future, she's remembering a version of it that has already happened in a parallel reality. A crude simplification, but serviceable, Finch said, a faint smile touching his lips. Think of consciousness not as a product of the brain, but as a field that the brain tunes into, like a radio. Most brains are locked on a single, consensus station, the reality we all agree upon. Our work is designed to loosen that dial, to allow the operator to scan other frequencies. To experience other stations of reality. And on one of these other stations, you murdered her. The accusation hung in the air, stark and brutal. Finch didn't flinch. His composure was absolute. On one of an infinite number of stations, every possible event occurs, he replied calmly. In one, I am a murderer. In another, I am the victim. In most, we live out our lives in mundane harmony. Elara's sensitivity has caused her to fixate on a negative probability. She is giving it energy. She is, through the focused power of her own belief and fear, tuning her radio to that very station. She is not a passive observer, Mr. Holmes. She is an active participant in the collapse of her own reality. It was a breathtakingly elegant, and terrifying, hypothesis. He wasn't denying the truth of her memory, he was recontextualizing it. He was shifting the blame from his actions to her perceptions. Listen to him, I thought, directing my attention to you, the silent partner in this investigation. This is the language of modern mysticism, dressed in the lab coat of quantum theory. The law of attraction, the power of assumption, it's all here, weaponized. He speaks of consciousness as a fundamental field, that a source from which all reality springs. And he has built a machine to manipulate it, asterisk. My concern is for her well-being in this reality, I said. The one where we are standing in my flat. She is terrified. She believes you are a threat. And I believe she is a threat to herself, he countered. The state she is in is unstable. If she continues to focus on this dark probability, she could catalyze a cascade failure in her own psyche. Or worse, she could manifest the event here, in our shared timeline. I came to you not to warn you away, but to ask for your help. Help me guide her back. Help me show her how to tune her dial to a brighter frequency. He was brilliant. He had taken my investigation and inverted it, making himself the concerned savior and Elara the unstable element. He had offered a partnership. It was a masterstroke. I will need to see your work, I said. Your lab. Your methods. If I am to understand what is happening to her, I need to see the machine that is tuning the radio. For the first time, a genuine, full smile spread across his face. It was a disarming, charismatic expression, and it did not reach his eyes. Of course. I expected nothing less. Come to the Institute tomorrow, 10 a.m. I will show you the doorway. He placed his untouched glass of water on the counter. Be mindful, Mr. Holmes. When one stares into the abyss of possibility, it is not uncommon for the abyss to stare back. And it often uses your own face. With that, he left, the door clicking shut behind him with a sound of finality. The flat felt different. The air was charged, as if ionized by his presence. I went to my wall of notes, my mind racing. Finch was not a simple charlatan. He was a believer. a high priest of a new technological Gnosticism. He had built his church, and Elara was a congregant who had seen a vision of hell. My phone chimed. A message from Wiggins. Chimera Holdings. Financial trail leads to a private equity firm with significant defense contracts. One name recurs as a board member, Sir Eustace Blackwood. Retired intelligence liaison. Patron of fringe science. Objective appears to be the weaponization of non-local consciousness. Finch's entrainment devices are classified under cognitive influence platforms. Weaponization. The word landed like a stone in the still water of my thoughts. Finch's lofty talk of expanding consciousness was a facade. Someone was funding him to build a tool. To influence, to control, to perhaps even assassinate across those adjacent probabilities. And then, a second message, this one from an unknown number. It was a photo. A blurry, dark image, taken from a distance. It showed two figures in a rain-swept car park near the bypass. One was Elara. The other was a man whose silhouette was unmistakably Finch. His hands were raised, near her throat. The timestamp in the corner of the image was set for this coming Friday, 11:22 p.m. The message below it was from Elara. It's not a memory. It's a blueprint. And he's laying the foundation now. The plot, as they say, thickens, I mused, the image burning on my screen. But which plot? His? Or hers? She sends me a photo from a future that has not yet happened. A photo that, by all laws of physics, should not exist. Is this evidence, or is it a manifestation? Is she showing me the truth, or is she, as Finch claims, using the awesome, terrifying power of her own consciousness to build her own prison, brick by terrifying brick? Tomorrow, I will walk through his doorway. And I will see what kind of architect Dr. Alistair Finch truly is. The Institute for Cognitive Studies was a study in deliberate contradiction. A sleek, glass and steel structure nestled in a quiet, leafy corner of Kensington, it looked more like a minimalist art gallery than a place where the boundaries of the mind were being systematically dismantled. At 10 a.m. precisely, I passed through the automatic doors into a cavernous, white-walled atrium. The air was still, cool, and smelled of ozone and lemongrass. The silence was profound, a palpable weight that seemed to absorb sound itself. Dr. Finch was waiting for me, a serene smile on his face. He was dressed in a dark, tailored suit that echoed my own style, a subtle mirroring I noted with clinical interest. Mr. Holmes. I'm glad you came. His voice was low, yet it carried perfectly in the hushed space. This is where we learn to listen to the silence between thoughts. He led me through a series of corridors, our footsteps silent on the polished concrete floor. There were no windows to the outside world, only soft, ambient light emanating from the ceiling itself. It was a sensory deprivation tank built on an architectural scale, designed to pull the focus inward. You are wondering about the technology, I thought, my internal monologue directed at my unseen audience. You expect blinking lights, complex consoles. But the most powerful tools are often the most subtle. This entire building is a tool. It is a tuning fork, and everyone inside is being brought to its frequency. We entered a circular room, domed and utterly black. In the center was a single, reclined chair that looked more dental than therapeutic. Arrayed around it were what appeared to be speakers, but they were fashioned from a crystalline material that seemed to hold light within it. This is the resonance chamber, Finch explained, his voice taking on a reverent tone. The heart of our work. We do not use drugs or invasive electrodes. We use precisely calibrated scalar waves and harmonic frequencies. The body is a complex system of vibrating energies. The mind, the seat of consciousness, operates at its own resonant frequency. Most people are dissonant, their thoughts and emotions a chaotic cacophony. We introduce a coherent signal. To what end? I asked, my eyes tracing the lines of the crystalline emitters. Harmony is a pleasant concept, but your backers at Chimera Holdings are not, I suspect, philanthropists of the soul. His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. A sharp mind. Of course you looked. The practical applications are far-reaching. A coherent consciousness is a focused consciousness. It can enhance learning, accelerate healing, and, yes, influence external reality with greater efficacy. The ancients knew this as prayer or manifestation. We know it as quantum biofeedback and intentional field resonance. He was speaking the language of Joe Dispenza, of the New Thought movement, but with the lexicon of a physicist. He was building a bridge between the mystical and the scientific, and I had no doubt which side his paymasters were interested in. "Show me the data from Elara's session," I said, cutting to the heart of the matter. "The one that triggered her temporal bleed-through." He nodded, unsurprised. He led me to an adjacent control room, a space of darkened glass and holographic displays. With a few gestures, he pulled up Elara's file. The chaotic EEG spike from her memory was displayed alongside other data streams, heart rate variability, galvanic skin response, and a complex, shimmering graph he called a probability coherence index. "This," he said, pointing to the PCI graph, which showed a violent, off-the-charts peak, "is the signature of a significant reality shift." Her consciousness didn't just observe another probability, for a moment, it became entangled with it. She didn't see a possible future, Mr. Holmes. She experienced the sensation of being in that future. The memory is so vivid because, for her neural pathways, it was real. It was a terrifyingly beautiful idea. The ultimate empathy, not just understanding another's pain, but inhabiting it across the dimensions of self. And the content of that memory? I pressed. Yourself as her murderer. Is that a common probability you encounter here? For the first time, a shadow passed behind his silver eyes. The content is generated by the subject's own deep-seated fears and beliefs. The process strips away the ego's defenses. What emerges is the raw, unvarnished data of the psyche. Elara has trust issues. A deep-seated fear of betrayal, particularly by male authority figures. Her relationship with me is complex. I am her mentor, her partner. The process amplified that fear, gave it a face, my face, and a narrative. It was a perfect, closed loop. Her fear created the vision, and the vision validated her fear. A self-licking ice cream cone of existential dread. But I am a detective of the broken loop, the anomalous data point. Yet, she provided a photograph, I said quietly, watching him. A photograph from that future event. How do you explain that? Did her fear develop a talent for photography? Finch went very still. The air in the control room seemed to grow colder. A photograph? I showed him the image on my phone. The rain-swept car park, the two figures, the timestamp. He stared at it, his face a mask of calm, but I saw the rapid pulse in his neck, the slight dilation of his pupils. Surprise. And something else. Not fear. Fascination. This is remarkable, he whispered, his clinical detachment returning, overriding his initial shock. A physical artifact. A quantum echo made manifest. Her focus must be incredibly powerful. He looked at me, his gaze intense. This changes the risk profile significantly. She is not just perceiving, she is materializing. Do you understand the implications? If she can pull a photograph from a non-manifested timeline, what else can she pull? Or, push? The unspoken question hung between us. Could she push him into that timeline? Could she manifest the event itself? My primary concern remains her safety in the present, I stated, reasserting control. I need to speak with her. Now. Of course, Finch said, his manner once again smooth and accommodating. She is in her private quarters here in the Institute. For her own protection. The phrase was a velvet glove over an iron fist. He led me to a residential wing, rooms that were more luxurious hotel suites than hospital rooms. He keyed a code into a door and opened it. "Elara? Mr. Holmes is here to see you." The room was dim. Elara was sitting on the edge of her bed, wrapped in a blanket. She looked smaller than before, hollowed out. But her eyes, when they met mine, held a desperate, burning intelligence. "Sherlock," she breathed, a flicker of hope in her voice. Finch lingered in the doorway. "I'll give you some privacy." He smiled, a benign, caring expression. "Remember, Elara. The future is not fixed. It is a garden of forking paths. Choose the path of light." He closed the door, and I heard the distinct, soft click of a magnetic lock engaging. We were prisoners of his concern. The moment the door shut, Elara was on her feet, the blanket falling away. "He's lying," she hissed, her voice low and urgent. "It's not my fear. It's his intent." She went to her desk, opened a hidden compartment in the bottom of a drawer, and pulled out a small, black journal. "I kept this. He doesn't know. The meditation, the frequencies, it's not about expanding consciousness for the betterment of humanity. It's about control. He calls it source code manipulation. He believes that a sufficiently focused consciousness, entrained to the correct frequency, can overwrite the source code of reality itself. He doesn't want to tune into other stations, Holmes. He wants to become the broadcast tower." She thrust the journal into my hands. It was filled with her neat, precise handwriting, interspersed with complex diagrams and equations that mirrored the ones on my wall at home. But the content was darker. Notes on subjective reality collapse, imposing will upon the quantum field, and references to the samadhi state, not as enlightenment, but as a weapon, a state of pure, undifferentiated consciousness from which one could issue commands to the universe. And there, on the last page, was a diagram that chilled my blood. It was a sketch of the resonance chamber, but with two chairs. One for the operator. And one for the lens. The notes described the lens as a highly sensitive individual, like Elara, whose amplified consciousness could be focused and directed by the operator to achieve a specific, tangible result in the physical world. Finch wasn't just a researcher. He was an operator. And Elara was his unwilling lens. Her memory wasn't a random bleed-through. It was a preview of his intended use for her. A final, terrible act to test the ultimate power of his machine. A murder, not of passion, but of paradigm-shifting experimentation. "The photograph," I said, my mind connecting the dreadful dots. "How did you get it?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know. I woke up with it on my phone. It was just, there. Like my terror had developed a developer and a printer." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "He's not trying to stop it, Holmes. He's trying to orchestrate it. Friday night. The bypass. He needs the specific energy of that place, that time. He thinks the urban ley lines there will amplify the effect. He's going to use me to prove that consciousness can kill." The lock on the door disengaged with a soft hum. Our time was up. So here we are, I thought, the weight of the journal in my hand feeling like the weight of a world. Not a simple case of a man threatening a woman. This is a battle of realities. He possesses the technology, the architecture of belief. She possesses the raw, untamed power of a consciousness that has touched the source. And I am caught in the middle, a detective whose only tools are logic and a leather notebook, trying to solve a crime that has not yet happened, in a world where the rules are being rewritten by the second. The final move is not on a chessboard, but in the vast, silent field of mind itself. And the game is about to begin. The drive back to my flat was a blur of rain-smeared streets and racing thoughts. Elara's journal felt like a live wire in my pocket, humming with forbidden knowledge. Finch's serene facade had cracked, revealing the ambitious, dangerous mystic beneath. He wasn't a killer in the conventional sense, he was an ideologue, a techno-shaman willing to sacrifice a life on the altar of a paradigm. Elara was not a victim of circumstance, but a chosen component in a terrible machine. Back in the sanctuary of my flat, the city sprawling like a neural net below my windows, I laid out the evidence. On one side of my mind, Finch's elegant theory of probabilities, his resonance chamber, the backing of shadowy interests seeking a new kind of weapon. On the other, Elara's raw, terrified testimony, the impossible photograph, and the damning diagrams in her journal. The lens and the operator. You are waiting for the confrontation, I mused, pouring a cup of black coffee, the steam a ghost in the lamplight. The dramatic showdown where I present the evidence and the villain confesses. But this is not that kind of story. The battlefield is not a physical space, but the no-man's land between perception and reality. To stop him, I must first understand the rules of his game. And to do that, I must play. Wiggins had delivered his final report. Chimera Holdings, Sir Eustace Blackwood, the defense contracts, it all pointed to a cold, pragmatic interest in psychological operations, in destabilizing targets by manipulating their perceived reality. But Finch's goals seemed to have transcended his paymasters. He wasn't just interested in manipulation, he sought creation. And destruction is the simplest form of creation. I opened Elara's journal to the most critical page. The diagram of the two chairs. The notes described a resonant tether between operator and lens. The lens's amplified consciousness, flooded with a specific intention from the operator, would act as a forcing function on the quantum field, collapsing probability into a predetermined reality. It was the law of assumption, weaponized. Assume the state of the wish fulfilled. In this case, the wish was death. But every system has a flaw. Every machine has a safety release. My eyes traced the equations around the lens component. They described a feedback loop, a vulnerability. The lens wasn't a passive tool, it was an active, conscious participant. Its own beliefs, its own assumptions, would interact with the operator's command. If the lens's belief was strong enough, if it held a counter-assumption with greater conviction, it could theoretically override the signal. It could change the channel. Finch believed he was the broadcast tower. But what if the lens could become a jammer? The phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Elara's number. I answered. It was Finch's voice, calm and resonant. Mr. Holmes. I know you have the journal. A regrettable complication. But it saves us time. You see the elegance now, don't you? The sheer beauty of the mechanism. Where is she? My voice was flat, cold. Preparing. The conditions are almost optimal. The atmospheric pressure, the planetary alignments, all conducive to a clean collapse. I need you to understand, this isn't murder. It's a demonstration. A proof of concept that will liberate humanity from the prison of classical physics. You're a zealot, Finch. You've confused your own ambition for a messianic purpose. Perhaps, he conceded, a hint of madness coloring his tone. But tonight, I become a force of nature. And you have a choice, Holmes. You can be a witness to the dawn of a new human epoch. Or you can be part of the data set. The bypass. 11 p.m. Don't be late. The line went dead. He wanted me there. Of course he did. The skeptical detective, forced to witness the impossible. His ultimate validation. He was so sure of his control, of the inevitability of his script. But he had forgotten the first rule of any narrative, the protagonist has agency. I had 3 hours. I did not call Lestrade. This was beyond the jurisdiction of Scotland Yard. This was a matter for a different kind of authority. I sat in my chair, in the dark, and I did the only thing I could. I began to deconstruct the assumption. To you, the audience, this may seem like inaction. But it is the most critical action of all. He is using the power of focused belief to collapse a probability. I must use the same power to prop another one up. I am not a lens like Elara. My consciousness is not naturally amplified. But belief is not the sole domain of the mystic. It is also the tool of the logician. I believe in cause and effect. I believe in connection. And I believe in her. I closed my eyes, shutting out the world. I let the ambient music I use for thinking fill the space around me, but I focused past it. I focused on Elara Vance. Not as a victim, not as a component, but as a sovereign consciousness. I assembled every piece of data I had on her, her intelligence, her resilience, her fear, her love for the man Finch used to be. I built a model of her in my mind, not as she was, but as she could be. I held the assumption of her strength. The wish fulfilled was not her survival, that was a byproduct. The wish fulfilled was her sovereignty. Her ability to choose her own frequency. I was not broadcasting. I was reinforcing. I was adding my signal to hers, a harmonic intended to disrupt Finch's deadly transmission. The rain had started when I arrived at the Primrose Hill bypass. It was a lonely, windswept stretch of road, the city lights a distant galaxy. It was 10:58 p.m. They were there, just as in the photograph. Two figures standing by a sleek, black car. Finch, tall and imposing in his dark coat. Elara, pale and trembling in the downpour, her hair plastered to her face. But there were differences. Finch held a small, crystalline device in his hand, pointed at Elara. A portable emitter. And Elara, her eyes were closed, her face a mask of intense concentration. Holmes. Finch called out over the drumming rain, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. You came. You will see. The moment of becoming. He focused on Elara. Now, my dear. Let go. Feel the intention. The wish fulfilled. The end of your story, which is the beginning of mine. I saw her flinch, her hands flying to her throat. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. It was happening. He was projecting the command, and her amplified consciousness was making it real. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I simply spoke, my voice cutting through the rain with calm precision. Elara, I said. He is the signal. But you are the source. Her eyes flew open, meeting mine. They were wide with terror, but deep within them, a spark ignited. The source code is not his to write, I continued, walking slowly closer, my gaze locked with hers. You are not the lens. You are the programmer. Your fear built this prison. Your belief can open the door. Finch snarled, a raw, ugly sound. Ignore him. Focus on my voice. On the truth I am giving you. But the seed was planted. I saw the change in her. The terror in her eyes began to be replaced by a dawning, furious understanding. She was a computational linguist. She understood code. And she realized she was looking at the architect of a virus. She lowered her hands from her throat. She stood straighter, the rain seeming to energize her rather than diminish her. No, she said, her voice quiet but clear, a blade of sound. Your truth is a lie. She turned to face Finch, and her expression was no longer that of a victim, but of an equal. A rival programmer. You want to see a collapse, Alistair, she said. Let me show you one. She closed her eyes again. But this time, her posture was not of submission, but of command. Finch stared, the device in his hand seeming to grow inert. The air crackled with a new kind of energy. It was no longer focused and deadly, but expansive, unpredictable. The headlights of his car flickered wildly. The rain seemed to shift direction for a moment, blowing sideways in a gust that had no natural source. A nearby streetlight buzzed and went out. Finch took a step back, confusion and then fear on his face. What are you doing? Stop it. I'm changing the channel, Elara whispered. And then, it was over. The tension snapped. The air went still. The only sound was the steady fall of rain. Finch looked at her, then at me, his grand narrative in ruins. He wasn't a god. He was a man who had lost control of his experiment. With a cry of rage and despair, he turned and fled into the darkness, his figure swallowed by the night. Elara swayed on her feet, and I was there to catch her. She was exhausted, drenched, but alive. Truly alive. He's gone, she breathed. For now, I said. Men like him are never truly gone. They are ideas. And ideas are notoriously difficult to kill. We stood there in the rain, the two of us, the detective and the programmer of reality, on a lonely road that was now just a road again. So, what is the answer? I thought, as I led her to my car. Did we stop a murder? Or did we simply collectively choose a different probability? Was it my logical reinforcement that saved her, or her own awakened power? Or was it the simple, undeniable connection between two minds refusing to accept a monstrous truth? The mystery was solved. The immediate threat was neutralized. But the deeper mystery had only deepened. I had set out to investigate a crime and ended up questioning the very fabric of causality. I look at you now, the silent witness to this story. You want a clean ending. You want to know if it was science or magic, logic or faith. I cannot give you that. All I can tell you is this: the world is a story we are all telling together. And tonight, we decided to tell a better one. The case is closed. But the investigation into the nature of reality, that has only just begun.